You may have heard of the city of Troy, the Trojan War, the wooden horse, and Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. But there is much more to the ancient myth of Troy. Can this legend be true? Could these mythical characters, Achilles, Helen, Paris, be based on real people? Before we dive into one of the greatest tales of love and loss, courage and passion, violence and vengeance, triumph and tragedy, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like. For 3,000 years, the story of the ancient city of Troy and of the great war that was fought has been passed down by storytellers and famously by the Greek poet Homer. As it goes, the Trojan War began with a prophecy of the Order of the Olympians and a divine love contest. Many years before the war was to begin, both gods, Poseidon and Zeus, fell in love with the sea nymph, Thetis. Both wanted Thetis as a bride. However, they both backed off after they were told of the consequences that awaited them if they attempted to get her. If the sea nymph were to lay with Zeus or his brothers, a son would be born who would be stronger than his father and possess a weapon that would be much more powerful than the trident or the thunderbolt. To avoid this from happening, Zeus made it so that Thetis would have to marry King Peleus. After Thetis' marriage was settled, Zeus held a big feast to celebrate Peleus and Thetis' marriage, where all the gods were invited, except for the goddess of strife, Eris. Annoyed that she was turned away, Eris flung her gift among the crowd of guests and left the gathering. This gift was the Apple of Discord, a golden apple inscribed with the words "for the fairest." As the apples were thrown, the goddesses Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera began to fight on who should have the apple. Zeus was unable to decide by himself, so he sent the goddesses to Paris, the prince of Troy, to decide. But Paris too was unable to make up his mind, so the goddesses started to bribe him. Hera offered to grant him political power and a throne if he were to choose her. Athena offered him wisdom and skills in battle if he were to choose her. Aphrodite promised Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta, if he were to choose her. Without batting an eyelash, Paris chose Aphrodite. However, Helen was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. So Paris, under the disguise of a diplomatic mission, went to Sparta to abduct Helen from her home, so he could bring her back to Troy with him. Right before Helen laid her eyes on Paris, she was shot with an arrow by Eros, and fell in love with Paris the moment she saw him. Other versions of the myth say it was Zeus who started the Trojan War to cut down the population, especially of demigods. Zeus, being a womanizer, had many relationships with human women, which resulted in the birth of many demigods. And now, feeling that the earth was overpopulated, he wanted to depopulate it as much as possible. But returning to the most popular version, the Trojan War began shortly after the abduction of Helen. When Helen's husband, Menelaus, discovered his wife was missing, he got his brother, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, to lead a voyage to find her and get her back. Agamemnon was joined by the Greek heroes Achilles, Odysseus, Nestor, and Ajax, and accompanied by a fleet of more than 1,000 ships from throughout the Hellenic world. They crossed the Aegean Sea to Asia Minor to lay siege to Troy and demand Helen's return by Priam, the Trojan king. The siege, punctuated by battles and skirmishes, including the fabled deaths of the Trojan prince Hector and the nearly invincible Achilles. Sources vary on the time of Achilles' death. Some report earlier on in the war, while others say towards the latter. Nonetheless, these battles and skirmishes went on for about 10 years. Far from just observing the Trojan War from Mount Olympus, the gods also picked sides and got involved. Hera, after failing to claim the golden apple, Hera supported the Greeks and often tried to help them behind Zeus's back. Apollo, the son of Zeus, was a key supporter of the Trojans. He sent plagues on the Greek army, helped Hector on the battlefield to kill Achilles' companion, Patroclus, and was one of the most vocal gods to complain to Zeus about Achilles' treatment of Hector's body, which led to Zeus forcing Achilles to allow Hector's burial. Apollo may have also guided the arrow fired by Paris that killed Achilles. Aphrodite, she remained sympathetic to Paris, and despite not being associated with war, fought herself and was even wounded. Zeus, king of the gods, heard and agreed to Achilles' plea for the Greeks to suffer after he had been dishonored. It was Zeus who allowed the other gods to intervene in human affairs or not. And it was Zeus who was the keeper of fate, from which neither gods nor humanity could escape. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, was one of the 3 contestants for the Golden Apple, but when Paris of Troy didn't choose her, she supported the Greeks in war, often joining the battlefield and encouraging the Greek forces to fight harder. Hephaestus, as the divine blacksmith, he made the weapons and tools of the gods, such as the winged helmet and sandals of the messenger god Hermes. During the Trojan War, Hephaestus designed a new armor for Achilles when he finally decided to re-enter the conflict following the death of Patroclus. Hephaestus also intervened in the fighting on the Greek side. After 10 years, things took a turn when the Greeks retreated from camp and sailed away from Troy to the islands of Tenedos, leaving behind a large wooden horse and one of their men, Sinon, outside the gates of Troy. Inside Troy, there were many debates on if they should bring the wooden horse in. Unheeded warnings by Cassandra, Priam's daughter, Sinon spoke with the Trojans and told them that the Greeks had retreated from the war and that the horse was a parting gift that would ultimately give the Trojans a fortune. Convinced, the Trojans brought the horse into the city. Everyone was overjoyed, having won the war. However, once nighttime fell, the horse opened up, and out came the Greek soldiers. The wooden horse was a plan made by Odysseus to end the war. The wooden horse was designed to be hollow in the middle so that soldiers could hide inside. From inside the city, the Greeks were able to destroy the city of Troy and won the war. However, the surviving Greek heroes learned the hard way that gods never forget and hardly forgive, because even though they were victorious in the war, most of them were punished for their transgressions. In fact, only a handful of Greek soldiers made it back home, and that's with several adventures and exploits on the way. Even fewer were welcomed back to their homes because they were killed by their loved ones or they were exiled into oblivion. There were some cases where both incidents happened. Many portions of the Trojan War epics are difficult to read historically. Several of the main characters are direct offsprings of the Greek gods. Helen was fathered by Zeus, who disguised himself as a swan and took advantage of her mother Leda, and much of the action is guided or interfered with by the various competing gods. For example, Paris supposedly won Helen's love after awarding the goddess Aphrodite the golden apple for her beauty. Lengthy sieges were recorded in the era, but the strongest cities could only hold out for a few months, not 10 full years. Homer in his Iliad describes all the events of the 9th year of the war and refers to past events in a retrospective way, with flashbacks. The Iliad ends with the death of Hector from Achilles, and all the other events are described in Odyssey, the epic of the return of Odysseus home. In 1970, excavations at the site of Troy under German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann, a small citadel mound and layers of debris 25 meters deep was discovered. Later studies have documented more than 46 building phases grouped into 9 bands representing the site's inhabitation from 3000 BC until its final abandonment in AD 1350. Recent excavations have shown an inhabited area 10 times the size of the citadel, making Troy a significant Bronze Age city. The Greeks believed that the myth of the Trojan War was real, a historic event that took place somewhere between the 13th and 12th century BC. Troy was and is located in modern Turkey. However, we cannot believe that Helen of Troy was the reason for the actual war. Helen, although a real person, gave the ground for an ideal myth that would excuse the imperialistic attack of the Greeks to Troy, a place known for its riches and power at the time. Later excavations dated to about 1180 BC revealed charred debris and scattered skeleton, evidence of a wartime destruction of the city of the Trojan War. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe and follow our channel for more videos like this one.